Hey, what's up? I'm Rafael di Furia, aka Rafi D is me, and I am back at it again on another beautiful Friday night. People come to Italy for many different reasons. Some people are just having a vacation, some people are interested in actually living here, some people are going to be going through Jure Sanguinis here. But one way or the other, traveling around the country is probably going to be necessary for everybody. And so this week, I'll be covering some of my preferred ways of getting around the country and talking a little bit about each way: planes, trains, automobiles, and buses. But we'll also be talking about hotels and other things like that. But before we get too deep into the video, if you would like to see more about moving to Italy, Italian citizenship, and more, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on. And if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it, as it does help out the channel. But when it comes to modes of transportation, there's actually one mode I haven't mentioned yet: boats. When it comes to boats, there are some places like the lakes where you can actually take a boat and go hopping from one village to another, and that can actually be a pretty fun way to see the area. They're not usually so expensive. Or you can take boats from the mainland to Sicily. But because it's not a way to get around the whole country, in this video I'm going to focus more on the main methods of travel. So a lot of people come to Italy and they want to rent a car while they're here. When it comes to going out into the rural areas that really don't have public transportation or very minimal public transportation, a car is absolutely fine. But personally, if I were going to the major cities, I would not be interested in renting a car whatsoever. The way that people drive in Italy is a little different than what people might be used to, for example, in North America. But not only just that, in general in the larger cities, it's not so easy to find parking, and very often it's not cheap either. And in my opinion, having a car here probably might become a bit more of a nuisance than anything. Okay, you might have a bit more freedom to go out into the countryside a bit more. But even in a place like Milan, you have zones where certain types of traffic is simply not allowed, and tourist traffic is not allowed, period. And so what you'll have to do is park your car outside of this central area of the city and then take public transportation into the center or a taxi. But what about public transportation? Italy has pretty good connections, I have to say. Well, when they're not on strike, which thankfully isn't too often, but it can happen. But since we're already talking about four-wheeled vehicles, let's talk about buses. In between cities, you have a few different bus companies, one of which is called Flixbus. One of the nice things about Flixbus is that they have a website which is very easy to use, and you can go on there, select the locations and select the times and see what's available and when it's available, and you can pre-book your tickets. They even have a really easy to use app. Not only do they operate in Italy, but you can actually get connections all over Europe, and they do go to some smaller cities. Like even where I live, I can go to Milan for quite cheap. The prices fluctuate, but from where I live in Alto Adige to get to Milan, which is about maybe 5 hours-ish, maybe 5.5, there's a bus that only has a couple of stops, and that can be around 15 to 20 euros per direction. But sometimes they do have sales, and sometimes the prices are even less than that. Or if you're wanting to travel within a city, then this can be something that can be a little bit annoying if you don't speak Italian. In some places, you'll actually have to buy the bus tickets at a tobacco store. So if you don't have the Italian for that, that can be a little bit complicated to navigate. But then in a place like where I live in Alto Adige, you don't buy it from the driver. There's actually a little machine that's just behind the bus driver's little booth area. And traveling around by bus can be pretty cheap. In the south, it probably will be a little less expensive than in the north. But if you're wanting to take a bus to go to an airport, these options do exist. But since we're talking about getting to the airport, let's talk about flights. And don't worry, I'll talk about getting around by trains in a sec. Italy has quite a few airports that, depending on where you are, can be a little bit easier to or a little bit harder to get to. And depending on where you are in the country, you may actually want to fly from an airport in a different country. Like where I live in Alto Adige, I'm halfway between two airports, both of which aren't the closest for me to get to. One is Verona, which is about 3-ish hours to get to, and the other is Innsbruck up in Austria. So if you're going to be flying in and out of Italy or even around Italy, and you're close enough to the borders, depending on where you are, it may be worth considering an airport that's just a little bit outside of the country. Like even if you're on the Italian Riviera, somewhere close to maybe Ventimiglia, maybe flying in and out of Marseille might not be the worst option. It's always worth comparing different airports, because if you drive 1 hour in one direction or 1 hour in the other direction, the prices can change pretty drastically. Like for me, if I wanted to get to Bergamo, I can get to Bergamo in about maybe 4 hours or so, but to Verona, 3 hours. But the difference can be a few hundred euros depending on the flight, but not always, and it depends on where you're wanting to fly to and from. But one thing that people like to talk about when you're looking for flights is that you need to go into incognito mode or a private browsing mode in your browser on your computer. But the thing is, these days, it doesn't really make that much of a difference, okay, fine, your browser won't accept cookies like Cookie Monster, but now a lot of websites are tracking users by their IP address. So sometimes it doesn't make a difference really if you're private browsing or not. Also, once you start looking at a particular set of flights, then that's when the airline is going to take a note and say, all right, we're going to offer them the best price now, but then the next time when you come back, they're going to want to make sure they get you, so the prices will immediately rise up a little bit. Sometimes it can be the difference of $20, sometimes it can be a few $100. So basically, when you're looking at flights, be prepared to buy them then and there, because the first price that you see will probably be the best price that you see. But you can use an app like Hopper, which can help you track down different dates, and I don't use that app, and I actually don't like to go on the price comparison sites, because sometimes, even like if you go on to Kayak, for example, you could have a flight from Ryanair for about 170 euros. But if you go to Ryanair directly, you might be able to find that same flight for maybe 120 or 130. In my personal experience, going directly to the airlines will help you save the most, but that is not a rule, and there are very much exceptions to that. But regardless of the website, make sure that you're not logged into any of them if you want to get the real prices. One thing that I've actually had a lot of luck doing to try to find some of the best prices and to find out which airlines serve which airports, what you can do is search for the same flight at a different time of the year. You can go onto Google, Priceline, Skyscanner, any of these kind of price comparison websites just to get a rough idea. Then once you have a better idea of which airlines you're interested in, you can go directly to those airlines, and I've personally had a lot of luck finding lower cost flights that way, but not always. But there are times where I've seen that a Priceline deal with hotel and flight can be less expensive, so I wouldn't totally write off price comparison sites, but I probably would be less likely to use one. A lot of people also used to say that airlines would dump all of their flights all on like Tuesday or Wednesday, like right in the middle of the week, and that's when the flights would be the cheapest. But they don't really do that anymore, and they're dumping flights every day, all times of the day. The reason is because now a lot of it is automated, and it used to all be manual. There are days that are more desirable and less desirable. Just an example of something that recently happened when I was looking for flights. I was originally looking at flights that would be leaving on a Monday and coming back on a Thursday. I was looking for a flight from Verona to Palermo. The prices that I was finding on different airlines was starting at about €100 and going up to maybe about €250. And also, I was originally looking on a Monday until a Thursday, but there were a few flights where I was looking from Sunday until Wednesday, just in case. Then, a few days later, I went to go look back at the same flights. All of the flights had increased anywhere between 50 and €100, just in that short amount of time, and this was about 2 months before the selected flight dates. So then, a few days later, I looked again. The flights had increased again. So the flights that were originally about 100 to €250 were now about 300 to €800. And these different days that I searched for these flights, the exact same flights. And this was all within the space of about just a week. And then I found if you changed the dates just a little bit and actually extended the dates a little bit from Saturday until Saturday. And then if you take into account also that when you go someplace, you need someplace to stay. I was looking at places in Palermo, which were quite inexpensive, about €30 per night. So when you took all of that into account, even if you needed to stay the extra days in a hotel there, came down the extra days that you would have to spend in a hotel there would actually be less than the cost of the flight if you were to just stay a little bit of a shorter time. But since we're already starting to talk about hotels, let's get onto that. Don't worry, I will be getting to trains in just a sec. Wherever you go in the country, the prices will vary widely. The north, of course, in general will be more expensive, and the south will generally be less expensive. Sometimes you will find really great AirBNB places to stay at, but sometimes the Airbnbs will actually be the most expensive. But if you've actually never stayed with Airbnb before, I've got a link down in the more info section below that can actually save you a little bit on your first day, so feel free to check that out. And I have used Airbnb before, and I've liked it, but I personally would probably be more likely to get something on Booking. If I can get some sort of link that will also save you a little bit of cash, I'll put that down in the more info section below, or it'll be a pinned comment below the video at the top of the comment section. And when you're looking at places to stay, sometimes you'll just find a room in maybe someone's apartment, or a hostel, which will be a shared room with other people, maybe bunk beds or something. Although there are some hostels which do have private rooms, but that's not so common. And then another place that you might be able to find is a pensione. They're kind of like a hotel, but sometimes you have to share a bathroom. And then you have hotels, which almost always have a private bathroom. That's one thing that is very important to look at if a private bathroom is of importance to you, that not all places have private bathrooms. Generally, the places that are on the less expensive side will have shared facilities. And that's the nice thing on Booking, is that they actually list whether the place has a bathroom or not. On top, you'll be able to find some reviews of places, although I don't always trust the reviews. Look at the pictures and judge for yourself, but sometimes the pictures aren't always accurate. And then actually sometimes you will be able to find vacation rental apartments or whole houses. But just a quick example of the difference in price between the north and the south, if you were to look at a hotel room where I live in Alto Adige, it would be maybe around 120 to a maybe 150 for like a mid-range, kind of low mid-range room. But in some place like Palermo, you would spend significantly less for the equivalent room that you would find here. Like in Palermo, you would find the same room that is like maybe 120, 150 here for maybe about 30 to 60 in Palermo. So if you are looking for a budget vacation to Italy, it might be worth thinking about checking out Sicily or somewhere else in the south, maybe even Puglia. Now let's finally talk about trains. Trains happen to be my favorite way of getting around the country. No, they don't go everywhere, but they can be pretty easy to deal with. But more for shorter distances. If you're going from the north to the south, like I was looking at Verona to Palermo, it's better to take a train to get as close to the airport as you can, and then take a bus from the train station to the airport, and then get to your destination that way, assuming you don't have a car here. Whereas if you were to try to take a train from the tip of the north to the tip of the south, that would take a very, very, very long time. Not to mention, to get to Sicily, you would probably either have to switch over to a bus or a boat, or some combination of the two. When it comes to train companies, there are really only two, Italotren and Trenitalia. Italotren seems to be trying to market itself as a lower cost option, but with higher quality services and more comfortable trains. I still haven't been on one of their trains, but I've never really had a problem with the Trenitalia trains. Some of them are a little bit aged though. But this is something else that's worth taking into account, is that you do want to compare between the two. Italotren has fewer places that it actually serves, and Trenitalia's network is much larger, but the Italotren network is actually expanding slowly. They recently actually just started serving the area that I live in. I have to go to the larger city of Bolzano if I want to get one of their trains. But when it comes to Trenitalia, you have a few different types of trains. You have local trains, regional trains, and fast trains. The fast trains, of course, are going to be a little bit more expensive, and sometimes the regional trains will be just a little bit longer. Like if you were trying to go from the southern tip of Lake Garda to Milan, on the fast train it would be about an hour, maybe like 55 minutes, and that could be, say for example, this is not the exact price, but for example, maybe 20 euros. You could take a regional or interregional train that would take maybe about an hour and a half and pay maybe 10 to 15 euros. It all depends, and it's worth comparing the prices. Even at different times of day, the prices will change. And also, if you are a pensioner and over a certain age, you can get a bit of a discount on your prices. Not always, but sometimes. And when it comes to the tickets, you'll also have first class options and second class options. The first class tickets, of course, will almost always be more expensive, but sometimes there are deals where they'll actually be a little bit less. Very often, there's not actually that big of a difference between the comfort of first and second class, but on some trains, the first class will have a little bit more space and be a bit more comfortable, and especially during the high tourist season, the first class will probably end up being a lot quieter than the second class, which can often have a lot of families and screaming children, speaking from experience here. But anyway, of course, this is an open conversation, so if you have any tips and tricks that you want to share with others, feel free to leave that down in the more info section below, or if you have any questions, feel free to also leave that down in the more info section below, or if you ever have any questions, always feel free to contact me privately over social media or email. And if you would like to see more content like this, please be sure to subscribe with that notification bell turned on, and if you could also give this video a like, I would really appreciate it. And also, if you feel like any of my videos have helped you maybe save some time or money, please consider becoming a monthly patron over on rafaeldifuria.com/Patreon, or if you just want to help out once, you can go to rafaeldifuria.com/support. And as always, I'm Rafael Di Furia, aka Rafi D is me. Thank you for joining me on another beautiful Friday night. I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see y'all later.